Okay, hi there. My name is Jamil. This is my S tier game dev book list. I've been doing game development primarily with Unity for about the last 3 years. Uh, I like reading books on game dev, usually before I go to sleep. It's I find it relaxing. It's a nice way to go to bed, and it helps me discover new things that I'm not normally thinking about. So this is the S tier. These are the best of the best, in my opinion. I'm gonna do an A tier and then an other tier after that. So this is the list of books. Dark Alley Marketing, got it right here. Um, Basically, it's about marketing, but it's kind of made simple, so really like it. Principles of Game Audio and Sound Design, really like this one. Exposed me to a new way of thinking and looking at sound, I guess, that I wasn't used to, or setting up sound. Next up, Clean Code, a handbook of agile software craftsmanship. This is by Robert C. Martin, or Uncle Bob as he's known. Not really related to game dev, but extremely important in terms of how you set up and organize large coding projects, which in my mind is very relevant to game dev. Game Feel, a game designer's guide to virtual sensation. This is all about feel or juice, or having it, making your game juicy, making it feel good, making it so that when players play your game, they their brains are going to release dopamine, and they're gonna enjoy the experience. It's focusing on a lot of the little details that really make a game feel really nice. So yeah, super good book. Okay, let's dive into it. So Dark Alley Marketing. So why do I like this one? First of all, the length. It's tiny little book here, so super easy to read. Um, for people who are super new to game dev, one of the facts you're going to run into really quickly is that getting your game in front of people is just as important, and probably actually more important than actually making a good game. Um, Anyone who talks about this will tell you that like making a good game is important. You can't really market a bad game, or it turns into a silly thing where you're just cranking out shovelware or something like that. But even if you do make a good game, people probably aren't going to notice. And that's kind of sad, but that's why you learn about marketing and planning your website, and reaching out to social media influencers and things like that. And this book will give you some good tips, and it won't take up a lot of your time, because the hard thing with game dev is that making games just takes tons of time. So it's hard to do the marketing in addition to that. So this will give you the bare basics. And in my mind, a lot of this is like, if you can do the stuff in Dark Alley Marketing, it's probably going to set you up to find someone who is more capable and more engaged in that subject. It's kind of one of these, like, you got to help yourself before you'll find the people who will help you, kind of thing. Or before you'll be able to get the publisher to take care of this type of thing, you got to have the basics of marketing down yourself. And you have to keep doing it and promoting it. So yeah, really good, straightforward advice for making a website, interacting with reviewers, and other important figures. I've read this book 1.5 times. I'm working through it. I'm actively trying to implement all of the advice in this book. I'm at a phase right now where I finished up my game, Superstar Shooter 16. I'm sort of starting the next project, but I'm also like getting my website set up, getting my YouTube channels all organized, working on my business type of thing. Okay, something a little probably more exciting for the people who are really into game dev is Principles of Game Audio and Sound Design. This is by Jean-Luc Sinclair. For me, I was a musician in the past. I took music lessons. I played in bands. I wasn't like a professional musician, but I've played at bars and stuff like that. I learned a ton from this book, and it's a subject that I was interested in, and I found out through reading this that I knew a lot less than I thought I did. So there's a good balance of code and other things. Like, a lot of this book will talk to you about things like setting up your own sound library, where to go for sound files, how to organize things, when to use sound. So it is a Unity book, but it would be valuable to someone even if you weren't using Unity, although all the code is in C sharp. So it's about half and half was how I felt. Like half of it was cool coding examples showing you how to do like a fade in or fade out and things like that, or how to implement reverb and when to use it, that type of thing. And a lot of it was the other half was kind of the theory of how to be a sound designer. Um, Doing high quality audio work is a lot of work. From reading this, I didn't realize how much goes into it. But as I read it, things started going off in my head like, oh, I remember when this game did procedural sound, or I remember how, in the climax of the battle, the orchestral soundtrack seemed to pick up at the same time, and like, oh, that was all intentional. That wasn't just a coincidence. So, um, it's neat. It's a cool book. It's cool stuff to think about. Uh, there aren't many options available in terms of sound design books, at least as far as I could tell. I think it might have been because I was specifically looking for one where it's sound design for Unity. So I think it's a pretty special book, especially if you're still in the Unity ecosystem, and very very good. That's why it's in my S tier. Clean Code by Uncle Bob. Um, so this is not a Unity book. This is not a game dev book. It has lots of coding examples, but they're mainly web focused. The kinds of things you're going to think about, you're probably told these in school. If you weren't, you should really implement these, because what I found is like I did a comp sci degree. Probably my biggest assignment probably had 400 or 500 lines of code. I made an Uno game for one of my classes, and like it was pretty complicated. My game, I did the code analysis on it. I think it has 5,000 lines of code. So you start finding it's like, oh shoot, where did I leave that method? And what does this vaguely named variable do? And it starts getting really hard. So you got to refactor your code often. That's an Uncle Bob thing, and it's kind of like, once you get things functional, that's not good enough. Like, okay, good for you, you got it working. You got to refactor your code so that 6 months from now, when you're reading this code again, it's still going to make sense to you. So that's kind of one of the big things. And like for me on my first game dev project, I kept tripping over. I'm not going to call it bad code. It's not broken code, but it just I'd have to modify something, and I'd be changing code from a couple years back, and it was just a pain trying to remember what all these things did, and it wasn't clear. So um, large parts of this book were beyond me. Lots of it's really heavily web focused, and I took some of the basics in school, but I'm not a super big web guy. Um, if you're on the fence about this book, if it sounds lame to you, go watch some of Uncle Bob's videos. I know for me, I saw Uncle Bob at first when I was in university, and I thought it was pointless because he was talking about gargantuan projects, and it just didn't click to me that like, if you're working on a tiny little project, this doesn't matter. But if you're working on something big or something you're going to work on for a long time, like a game where you've got a multi-year commitment, this is going to be critical to your success. Be strategic with how you structure your games. Use lots of scripts. Keep your scripts short and sweet. That type of thing. Um, Learn about this stuff as soon as you can. Even if you just go and watch some of his videos, it'll make sense to you if you keep your mind on the context of like I'm building a big project that's going to have a long time frame. So yeah, that's that on clean code. Okay, game feel. This one was by Swink. So, have you ever thought why games are fun? Why some games aren't fun, even though you think you'd expect that you'd like them, but you end up not liking them, things like that. Um, and there's lots of reasons for that. It could go beyond game feel, but game feel is huge. So a lot of this, it gets into this sort of the psychology of how we interact with video games and how we control the character. And it's sort of like the goal is to have the character be sort of an extension of yourself. If you feel disconnected from the game or the character, then it's bad game feel. Um, so your controls should feel good. There's the juiciness. Everyone talks about that. So when you like shoot an enemy, little bits of particles should fly off of them. A sound effect like a ricochet should should sound off as, the bullet bounces off the robot that you just shot. And maybe the screen should shake a little bit, or as that robot, that killer robot's walking towards you, maybe each footstep the screen should shake, and there should be a loud stepping noise. And that kind of those kinds of things really help to immerse the player. It's those little details make a huge impact. Another thing I really like, because I've kind of a background in engineering, is ASR and ADSR curves. So ADSR is the more complicated one. It's attack, decay, sustain, release. If you've ever played a guitar, this is probably all sounding familiar to you. Like when you first pick a note, it's really loud and it kind of peaks and then it sustains for a while and then it dies off. It takes quite a while, but eventually the sound goes away. You can apply this principle to a lot of things. So you could have your players run cycle be along this line. So the A would kind of be the attack is like the acceleration. You have the sustain as the player is running. They reach some maximum velocity, and release would kind of be how long the player takes to decelerate and come to a stop. Um, those ASR, ADSR curves, eventually you start realizing they're everything. So you could structure your fade ins and fade outs around this. You could have, the screen goes black pretty quickly as your attack phase and sustain, and then release and it's fully black. That kind of thing. There's tons of things you could do with this. That was maybe a bit of a weird example, but if you read the book, you'll realize it's really important. This piece of math. There's some weird parts of the book. I don't think it's like merits an adult rating, but the author talks a lot about his life experiences, and I don't know if it's intended to be quirky or a little weird, but there's some spots in it that are a little strange, but the content is so valuable. It's in my S tier. You could just watch a few videos about juice or juicing up your game. Those I've seen lots of videos like that. They're really good. It's very similar subject matter, but I think the book goes into a little bit more depth. Um, Depending on how your brain is, I think a lot of people would struggle with this. Like for me, I got really obsessed with ADSR curves because my background's pretty mathematical. I'm a lot weaker on sort of the touchy-feely psychology type of side of things, and reading about those things was harder for me. And it was harder for me to understand those types of things. Where someone might be the exact opposite, right? They might see all these stupid math curves and be annoyed by it, but then, they might be super into the psychology and the touchy feely thing. So, because there's these opposing kind of fields all mixed into one book, I shouldn't call them opposing, but very different fields all mixed into this book. It could be a little challenging for some people. It wasn't that bad though, and I mean I read the entire thing. I enjoyed it. There were parts that didn't fully click with me, but it was a good book. So that's my S tier. I'm going to wrap things up there. Thanks for watching.